Have you ever seen people get featured in these huge media outlets like the Today Show, or they're on Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn, and you think, how in the world did they do that? I don't think I could ever do that myself. Well, if so, today's episode is for you. This is probably the most detailed, in-depth episode that I've ever heard on media exposure. And I'm speaking with Christina Nicholson. Now, Christina is the founder of Media Maven. She is also the founder of Clout, which is a SaaS company that helps you find the top 250 podcasts in every single category. It's a really incredible tool. But today's episode is so jam-packed with information. We talk not just about the practical aspects of getting featured in the media, but also some of the emotional aspects, because admittedly, I am a little nervous when it comes to pitching myself. And so Christina sets me straight a little bit. So if you're interested in hearing that, stay tuned. Christina, I am so excited to chat with you today. Thank you for coming on the show.
I am happy to be on the show. Thank you so much for bringing me on.
Well, when I was thinking about what I wanted this to be about and what direction, I honestly struggled a little bit because you've done so much. You've scaled your own PR agency to over $1 million in revenue. You've started a SaaS company, which we have in common, as well as you've just been featured in so many places. But I really wanted to stick to your roots and just really dive into PR, maybe a little bit selfishly because it's something that I don't know a whole lot about. And so I just really wanted to dive in and pick your brain a little bit about being featured, about like the ideology around PR and when is good timing for it and all of the things. So that's what I want to focus on today. But before we jump into all of that, I would love for our listeners just to kind of hear how you got started, kind of your origin story of sorts. What got you to this point?
Yeah, so it's definitely not going to school for PR or ever working at an agency, which some people may think like, oh, you don't have PR experience. But I think it is better because I have experience working on the other side. So I was a TV reporter and anchor full time. I still do it on a freelance basis, but I did it full time for over 10 years. And when I was in that role, I was pitched all day, every day by not only business owners, but also publicists. And it was just very clear that a lot of those publicists never worked in a newsroom. They didn't quite know how we put a story together, what our morning meetings looked like. And what made it obvious was the way they were pitching us. Like you were just never going to get coverage. So when I was looking for a more flexible schedule, having 2 kids, living in South Florida, my parents don't live here. My husband's parents don't live here. So like childcare was an issue. I needed a more flexible schedule. So I started applying for PR jobs at different local PR agencies. And one of them, I remember, emailed me back and was like, oh, well, you don't have any PR experience, so we're not going to hire you. And I was like, okay, well, that's stupid because I have experience deleting everything you send me as a journalist. So like, I could tell you why I'm deleting it and what you need to change so you actually get coverage. So that's kind of the outlook that I have on PR and how me and my entire team at Media Maven execute, because most of my team, they also come from newsrooms. They're also former journalists. So that's how I started the agency. People were like, I want this, but I can't afford agency prices. And that's what brought along the online course. So people could just do it themselves. And basically, I would just tell them what to do.
Wow. That's such a unique perspective. I love that too, just because, I could go down a whole tirade, but I'm all about like, let's break like the norms of what everyone says. Like you have to do this path to get XYZ and you have to go to college for this and have a degree in this. And it's like, or there's this thing called life experience and obviously it's been successful. So you've gotten some pretty big name recognition for yourself and for your clients. I would love, please brag a little. Like what have been some of the highlights there?
Well, I think it's so important to practice what you preach. Like whenever I've hired a few business coaches in my day, I would never hire a business coach who wasn't good at business. It's just, you have to practice what you preach. It's like when, all those people show up in your DMs, like, let me help you with your Instagram. Well, let me look at yours. Yours sucks. So why would I hire you to do mine? So I just think it's so important to practice what you preach. And honestly, me earning coverage on podcasts like yours, or me earning coverage in different outlets, whether it be on TV or writing for Inc. magazine, and then me sharing all of that on my social media. That's what brings in the leads. That's how I get all of my leads. I've tried salespeople before. I have not had a good experience with salespeople. And now it's just like, I guess I just have to do this. I have to just keep putting myself out there and the leads will come. And that's how I built my business. So that's how I got invited to do a TEDx talk. Most people apply and go through like an interview process. I was invited because the organizers saw me on LinkedIn and saw what I was sharing. I've gotten multiple clients on the Today Show many times. I know that's everybody's like big goal. Done the Forbes thing, the CNN thing. I mean, it really depends on the client because every client has different goals and different, media outlets that are going to move the needle from them. But I think it's just super important for people to get out there and make yourself known so people know who to do business with. Like a lot of people, just to bust a myth right out of the gate, a lot of people make excuses like, oh, I'm not ready for this. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough team. I don't have enough this, that, and the other. You don't have enough of that because people don't know about you. Like everybody thinks they have to build this big business and brand before they start PR, but it's really the opposite. You can't build a big business and brand if people don't know about you. So if you're ready for a new client or a new customer right now, then you need to start earning exposure.
So you said something really interesting. You said, if you want to earn exposure, earn PR. And I feel like that might be, I don't know. I'm like, I feel like there's something there. I feel like you have something behind that choice of words. Like if I want to earn a place on a podcast or earn exposure, maybe talk about that a second. Do you have some views
Abby,
behind that?
You are correct. Because you are legit earning it. So there's 3 kinds of media. There's your own media, which is your website, your podcast, your social media. Like it's yours. You own it. You control what goes up there. Then there's paid media, which is putting out a Facebook ad or whatever else you're paying to be there. And then there's earned media. And I mean, it is what it is. You're earning that exposure. Like you are impressing somebody that has some kind of media outlet so much that they want to put you on there for free. So not only it's the hardest to get, it's the most competitive for that reason, but it's also the most rewarding because if people know, like, and trust you, Abby, and they hear me on your podcast, they're almost automatically going to know, like, and trust me because you are like referring me to them just by bringing me on your podcast as a guest. Like that's how this works. So yes, it takes more time. No, nothing is guaranteed because I can't tell you what you can and cannot put on your podcast. And some people think like they're so entitled to media exposure. They can tell you like, oh, well, make sure I say this or I want this, whatever. No, if somebody is giving you their platform, be gracious, be thankful because they are recommending you. They are like a word of mouth referral. And that's why it's earned media because you are earning it. Most competitive, but it's where you're going to see the biggest ROI for your time.
So good. I just knew it. I was like, she's got some, I'm about to get Christina on a soapbox. Let's go. I love it. It's so true. And so many parts to that. Well, number one, I remember back in the day before I even knew, I think when I like first was like, marketing, this could be interesting. I read this old like textbook that I found at a library on word of mouth marketing. And it's crazy because it's the longest standing form of marketing. I mean, before advertising even existed, here, try. I'm used. I don't know. I'm like trying to think of a caveman example. like I went to this pond to grab some water. You should too, right? Like, I mean, it's literally like withstands the test of time. But before advertising even existed, people just telling people about, hey, this thing is good. You should use it too. It will forever be the most powerful form of marketing. And now it displays itself in so many different ways. And like you said, I do believe that whether it's PR, partnerships, like borrowing somebody's audience in a sense, earning the right to be presented in front of their audience, I think it still is. It's like the modern form of that word of mouth marketing. Do you agree?
Yeah. And it's not one-to-one like the cavemen about the water.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's like one to many. Like just think like when I was on Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income, I've been on a few times and that's 1 to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, however many listeners he has. So I'm spending 30 minutes to reach all of those people. And not only that, but earned media lasts forever. It's not like an ad where if you stop spending money, it goes away. Like you can still find the podcast that I've been a guest on from 5, 6 years ago. You could still see all the articles I wrote for Inc. magazine because that's all organic. It's not paid for. So that's a big other benefit is that it lasts forever, but you can reach so many people with just one thing at one time.
So good. So let's talk about some of the maybe like when people are resistant to this form of marketing, because I'll raise my hand and say, like I said, these are selfish questions. I just want to ask. I raise my hand because I feel like when it comes to, I do believe that it is earned media, right? Like, and I think that there is this hesitancy of like, I would love to present myself to possibly be on XYZ podcast or to be, featured in this speaking opportunity or something. But I think sometimes I'll get in my own head of like, I have one shot and I don't think I'm ready. I don't think that
Girl, okay.
like I get so in my head about it. So I just end up never doing it. Like I've never tried to be on anybody's like big, there's like, here's the level I'm comfortable with. Don't shoot for anything higher because it's scary. So help me.
Okay, we're going to break this down. Well, first of all, you're going to be on my podcast, Become a Media Maven. So we're going to break you in. Second off, this is such a mindset thing that it's just not true. So you have to explain to me, why do you feel like you are not worthy or deserving? There's idiots out there who are getting, I mean, honestly, this may help you. There are idiots, legit idiots, getting big time media coverage. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. And guess what? They have very successful businesses just because they're out there everywhere and people hire them. Like, honest to God. So if they can do it, then why can't you do it? Like, why do you feel like, again, that's why I wanted to bust the myth.
Yeah.
People make excuses on why they're not ready. Are you ready to sell something? If that answer is yes, then you are ready to get in front of those people who could potentially buy what you are selling. So, and why do you say like, oh, one shot, if you mess it up? This isn't live national TV. So
she's like calling me out. Does everybody hear this? She is calling me out on my own podcast.
You're making me mad, Abby, on your podcast.
I love it.
Why do you feel like you have one shot and you can't be in something that's big?
This is totally a mindset issue. So I know this is true. I think there is this level sometimes where I don't know the good blend between like, I'm like a cool person who doesn't brag about myself. And now I need to like brag about myself a little bit, but how do I do it in a way where I don't seem braggy, but I still seem
you're
cool?
Overthinking. You're totally overthinking it. I think it's just about, I mean, like, what are you an expert in? What do you want to earn coverage for? What can you talk about? You're just talking about it. Like the promotion. Okay, stop thinking you're bragging about yourself because you're not bragging about yourself. But the promotion that you're going to get is the side effect. And the big mistake that people make is when they approach these opportunities, they're so over the top in your face with the promotion because obviously that's what everybody wants is the promotion. But when you approach it like that, people are going to be like, oh my God, this is like, nobody wants to listen to this. Just like we don't want to watch TV just to watch all of the commercials. We want to watch TV for the actual content. So what can you bring to the actual show or the actual content? And you just speak what you know. You answer the questions. You just have a good time and have a conversation. And then by default, if people are jiving with what you're saying, then they're going to come and find you and do business with you. And just leads will just naturally come to you. So I think people need to stop overthinking everything. And I know this is easy for me to say because I've been on TV and I've interviewed all these people and whatever else, but honest to God, like I just did 2 interviews today with the nonprofit that I report for. The first guy was so nervous. He was so scared. And I was like, dude, we're just having a conversation. It's just chill. We're just having a conversation. And he was so nervous and scared. The second one was much more comfortable. And we were just like shooting the shit back and forth. And that's really all it is. And if you go into the opportunity thinking of it like this, like I'm just telling them about what I do and what they can do. I'm just giving them advice. Just look at it like that and you will do so well. And then that's step 1. And then step 2 is after that publication, whatever that media is, comes out, you have got to share it far and wide over and over again, tag the journalist, tag the outlet for weeks, for months, for years. I do this. And let me tell you, when you don't do it, it will hurt you. I have had clients who have lost media opportunities because a journalist will say, oh, well, last time we covered them, they didn't share it on social media and their competitors did. So I'm going to go back to your competitor because they shared it on social media.
Wow.
Like it makes a huge, I mean, just think about it. Like how rude of me, like first of all, Abby, you will see the podcast industry is insane. I think it is so rude to be on somebody's podcast. Like right now, you are letting me take over your platform because I can't shut my mouth right now, honestly. Like you are just letting me come on your podcast, say whatever. How rude of me to not share your podcast with people, to not say, hey, listen, I was on Abby's podcast, listen to our conversation. Like, first of all, it takes 2 seconds to do that. And second of all, not only is it good for you, but it's good for me because I'm telling people I was on your podcast. I am shocked. I've been doing my podcast for 3 years now. I would say 9 out of 10 people who come on my podcast never share the episode that they're on with anybody.
Wow.
And it's it blows my mind. Like, why would you not do that? I just let you talk to all of these people. I just gave you a platform and it's good PR for you. You're supposed to share it. You're supposed to tell people you're a guest on a podcast. That increases your authority and your credibility. Like it blows my mind. I'm kind of going on a tangent.
I
even forget what the question was.
If this could just be
just
Christina's
me blabbling.
just Christina's soapbox, I subscribe. This is good. It's so good. I hope everybody is listening because this is gold. And I mean, you're hearing it from the side of somebody who has been on both sides of the game, right? And I think that that's what's so important too, is you're like, hey, this is what's important. Listen up. This is literally, people will choose someone else over you if you don't do this. So do it. So good. So good. Okay, so talk to me about the pitch because admittedly, once I'm on a podcast, I feel great. I love talking. I don't mind too much talking about myself. I feel like, and I mean, this might be a leading question, but so much of what you're saying and what I'm gathering and what I know in my head, it's just sometimes you just have to hear things a few times before you really get it, is this lead with value, because that's what it sounds like. It's like hey, I am going to just be a person that's not just here to take, but here to give. So I'm assuming that your pitching strategy involves high value, as your follow-up strategy is, hey, I'm also going to, you've done me a favor in a sense by letting me, on your podcast. So I'm going to share it and I'm going to extend that. I'm going to give back. I'm going to add value on the back end. But I'm assuming that's kind of the process in the front end too, right? Is that hey, dear, the back end is I'm going to share it throughout the interview. It's I'm not just going to talk about myself and how awesome I am. It's a conversation. I'm sharing my knowledge to give value. So I'm assuming that goes into the pitch as well. Am I right?
Yeah. So I'll break it down to be more specific because we all hear the give value part, do something for them, whatever Gary Vee's book was, jab, jab, jag, right hook, whatever it was. Okay. You have to give them what they need on a silver platter because so many people are looking for coverage that if you don't give the journalist, the booker, the editor, the writer, the podcast host, whoever, everything on a silver platter, then your chances of coverage go down. So the way you do that, specifically as a podcast host, when I get pitches, I get the most generic. First of all, they're long. Don't make them long. We all have full inboxes. I get the most generic pitches and then, or the longest pitches, and then they're generic. So it's let me tell you how I did this through marketing. Let me tell you how I grew my business through marketing, or marketing secrets. It's all about marketing or managing your finances. Okay. But that's so generic. Give me a pitch. Be so specific that the person you're pitching can say, oh, wow, I've never had this pitch before. So instead of sending me an email about how you grew your business through marketing, tell me that you grew it by using Pinterest advertising. I've never once received a pitch about Pinterest advertising.
Wow.
If you want to send me a book about managing your finances, tell me how people in business can use the profit first method when they do their finances. And in 7 steps, this is what you need to do, step by step. So if you can just get super specific to where there is a tangible takeaway for somebody, whether that's, something visual for TV, or it's step by step for a podcast or an online interview, then you're going to get the coverage. I can give you an example, a real life example with one of my media mentoring clients. She was a dietitian in San Diego, and she wanted to earn exposure to reach more moms. This was in the fall. And I was like, okay, well, let's think of what's newsworthy right now. Because What most people do is they just write this thing, hey, I'm a dietitian. I can help you with this, that, and the other. Okay, like, so what? Like, why should I cover this now? Why do I need to talk about this?
Mm.
In the fall, it was back to school time. So we pitched the local TV stations like 5 things to pack in your kids' lunch so you can send them to school and they will come back with an empty lunchbox. And then she included some visuals because remember, this was for TV.
Yeah.
So she literally sent that out on a Monday, got an email back right away. They had her on a Wednesday morning on San Diego TV, a live 5-minute segment. She brought all this food. She set it up nice and pretty. It was her first time on TV. She was so nervous, but she did amazing because she was just having a conversation with the host. And right after that, like, it was crazy because her goal was to get moms calling her to help the moms with their kids' eating habits. But San Diego, it's a big entrepreneurial market. She had so many food brands reaching out to her because they saw her on TV. So they thought she was this big time influencer, even though it was her first time on TV. And they were like, we'll pay you to promote our food on your website. We'll pay you to do this. So then she turned into like a blogger making this money with brands. And now she's a regular on TV and she has partnerships with these brands, all because she was on TV. And that's just like one example of what can happen when you start earning exposure.
Oh my gosh, so incredible. I love it. And okay, so this, yes, giving, and I think that it's a well, especially in news, it's like there's a timeliness factor too in
Yeah.
pitching, right? Like you're more aware of like, hey, back to school, or this, I assume that, the media is going to be covering XYZ topic because it's this time of year.
Yeah.
Um,
So you always look at the calendar, but then you also want to look at what's trending in your industry. So, like, if you're a real estate agent, like, stay on top of the crazy housing market. If you are somebody who lives like very clean, look at Earth Day, like everything surrounding Earth Day, things like that. Like, if you're a VA, then you're going to want to pay attention to all of the people that are switching from office to remote, all the people that are starting their own business, things like that. Like, this is what I recommend. This is like a great tip. Go into Google and then search something like people working from home or people starting jobs, women starting new careers, moms starting new careers, and then filter that out in Google to news and in the last month. So you click on news, you click on in the last month, like last 30 days, whatever it is, and then you're going to see all of the news stories from the last 30 days about moms starting their own business. And then you're probably going to have some kind of statistics, some kind of data. You take that, you lead with that because that's the story. And then you're like, by the way, I can talk about this and I can share this point, this point, and this point. This is exactly what we did. I worked with Jessica Stansberry in my media mentoring program. This is exactly what we did to get her on TV in Charlotte. And this was my record. If I keep track, she started working with me on Monday. By Monday, we had our first call like Monday at 9 a.m. By Monday at noon, we did this and we had her booked for TV on Charlotte. And it was the story that day that we found that we pitched was 4 out of 10 mothers are breadwinners in their home. So she was like, this is the news. This is what they led with. Oh, and by the way, we have a local mom who's also a breadwinner, and she's going to tell you how she did it and how you can do it too.
Wow. Oh my gosh. This is so good. This is so actionable. I love it so much. So, okay, you have a story about how you've been featured in many, many places, and I would love to deep dive on each of them. But there was one that really stuck out to me where you talked about a podcast that led to,
Oh,
tens of thousands of dollars in
yes.
sales. Can you please tell
Yeah.
us this
Oh
story?
my gosh. I'm so happy to break it down. And I can even share the exact pitch
Okay.
that got me booked on that podcast. Yeah. I don't hold anything back, Abby. So I first got booked on Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income. Like, I just started my business, like brand new. So you can see that pitch is at podcastclout.com/Pat, like exact word for word. I just give that to you. So I got booked on his podcast. And well, first of all, when I pitched him through a video and he never watched the video because I saw like on YouTube, the view was 1 and that was just me making sure like all was good in the hood. So I followed up and then he watched the video. We booked the interview months out, did the interview, released the episode months out. And then I got an email from somebody months later saying, I heard you on this podcast. I knew I had to buy your course. So she bought my course. All right. So that's like $1,000 that I made from that. Okay. So then Pat opens up a mastermind. I apply to be in his mastermind. He already knows me from being on his podcast. So then he accepts me into the mastermind. I meet amazing people in the mastermind. I get on his podcast again. And then somebody hears me on his podcast. They have a bigger business, a bigger budget. So they hire my agency. So there's tens of thousands of dollars right there just from that. After that, Pat invites me on stage at Podcast Movement. That leads to more opportunities. I mean, so it's like one thing can lead to a different opportunity that can lead to a different opportunity. And I think the problem that people have with this is they're too impatient. One, they're too impatient. They want everything to happen right now. And two, they want to guarantee that all of this is going to happen. Well, if I spend an hour doing this, what am I going to get from it? And it's like, when it comes to earning media, there are no guarantees in anything. And I know some crazy ass people will hop in your DMs on Instagram telling you, do you want coverage here? I can get you here. They're all freaking liars. That's not how it works. But you have to just be patient and enjoy the process. And by default, these things happen. And it sounds kind of cliche, but you just have to make this marketing strategy a part of your life. Something I do in my program, module 0, it's how to implement this in your calendar. Because we all have bought online courses and we've either not done them or we've done them and not done anything that we learned. And that doesn't help anybody. So it's like 2 hours a day, just pitch people, even do it on Twitter. Everybody's on Twitter. Just have conversations with people on Twitter. I just had a best-selling author come on my podcast because we connected on Twitter, and she tweeted that she like quit her full-time job and now she's like a best-selling thriller author. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to know what's going on. Come on my podcast and tell me.
Wow.
Like, we did this all on Twitter. So you just have to make this part of your marketing strategy, and the opportunities will come by default. So that's how the one podcast interview snowballed into so many other things over time.
Is there a level of, whenever you're searching out these outlets, is there a place where you start? Like how do you know which, let's go down the podcast train. How do you know which podcast to pursue? Is it worthwhile to do some smaller ones? Do you start out with small and then go to the big
Abby,
guns?
this is why I created Podcast Clout.
Yeah.
That's really why I created it, because first of all, I created it for people in PR because there are so many softwares that'll be like, I want to be in Oprah magazine, and they'll, pop up all of the email addresses and contacts for everybody at Oprah. Or I want to be in the media in Minneapolis. It'll pop up, everybody in Minneapolis who writes about business, whatever. But nothing like this existed for podcasts. And so what I was doing is I'd open the podcast app and I would listen to a podcast, like we'll use Smart Passive Income for an example. And then I would get in my spreadsheet and I would write down this podcast, look for the best contact. Maybe it's an email, maybe it's an online form. And then I would scroll to the very bottom and it would say, if you like podcasts like this one, you might like these too. So then you start building that list and then you start searching for the contact information. But the problem is with these podcast apps, you don't know what's popular. You don't know which ones are still recording. Like, it doesn't tell you any of that. So I was like, there was no fast way to build a pitch list. So I was like, okay, I just want to know what the top podcasts are in each category. Like, that's just what people really want, because you don't want to be on a podcast nobody listens to. You don't want to be pitching podcasts that they haven't released a new episode in 2 years. So I was like, let me just connect with somebody who knows about creating software, because I don't know shit about creating software. I was like, is there a way that we can get the top 250 podcasts from the last 90 days in every category, just put them somewhere, and then get the contact information to pitch them to be a guest? That's all I want. So that's how Podcast Clout came to be. So when I'm pitching podcasts, I just get in there and I search the keyword marketing, or I go to the business marketing category, and then I build my list. And then I just go down the list pitching. We also share the last episode, because you don't want to pitch and be like, an idiot, not know what you're talking about. I'm not saying listen to 10 episodes for every podcast you're going to pitch. That's unrealistic, but you don't want to be blind, so I'm going to tell you, this is the host. This is what they talk about. Here's an episode till the last episode that you can listen to, and, things like that.
Oh my goodness. So good. I was checking it out right before we jumped on and I'm like, we need to get this. This is so good. So
Yes,
everybody,
free trial. So try it out for free. You can download, I think, up to 10 and you can see how it works and all of that. And we update it every 3 days, because podcasts are always dropping out of the top 250 or going into it. So there's probably a little over 20,000 of the top podcasts in there.
awesome. Well, everybody, I'm sure is going to love this because this was such actionable advice. Thank you. I feel like it flew by. I could ask you 100 more questions, but if people do want to find out more and know more of your amazing brain, where can they find you and find your podcast, your agency, podcast clout, all of it?
All of the things. Okay, well, that exact pitch that I sent to Pat Flynn, you can get that at podcastclout.com/Pat. So I think that'll help a lot of people. And let's see, I'm on social media at Christina all day. For Media Maven stuff, just go to earnmedianow.com. I've got tons of resources there. And yeah, I'm like an open book. Ask me anything. I'll tell you anything. I don't hold anything back. But that's where people can find me. Oh, and on my podcast, Abby, you're on my podcast, Become a Media Maven. We have lots of conversations about, behind the scenes of what I do. And then I bring on cool people like you to chat about what you do.
Awesome. Everybody, go check out her stuff. Christina, thank you so much again. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you. It was fun.
Hey, thanks again for checking out the Business Savvy Show. I hope that you enjoyed it. For more resources on hiring and scaling your business, make sure you check out businesssavvyshow.com. We'll see you next time.